address the chairperson, not any other person but the chairperson. And when a member stands up to speak, he or she does that within her rights. No one, no matter how aggrieved you might be, no matter how dissenting you are to what he or she is saying, you just do not have a right to try to stop her or him. So those members who try to stop other members are actually threatening, they themselves are threatening the decorum of the House, and that is totally unacceptable. Honorable Makaula, you have used very obscene language in the House. Which is totally unacceptable. At times, one is tempted to pose a question to oneself. Ogoti, do we have the interest of our people at heart? Or are we here representing our own jackets and sentiments? What has happened now, and the words that have been used in this House, it's beyond me what to say. I would not like to see commotion and chaos in the House. But what has just happened now, it's unprecedented. Honorable Makaula, members of the ANC, some of them, Honorable Makata, I'm aware that she has been talking to you directly. That is totally unacceptable, Honorable Makata. Because you were not supposed to have said anything, Honorable Makata, could you please apologize for your behavior? It's not acceptable, Honorable Member. Could you please apologize so that we can continue?
Though I don't really understand where exactly, but I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Baba. Honorable Kaula, Makaula, you have used very seriously insulting words. Could you please withdraw from what you have said? And apologize. Ngazinhlamba mama eziphumile. Even though you were offended, I understand.
Ngiyabonga sihlalo. Ngiyaxolisa. But ngiyacela ngikhuzela yena ukuthi anganginaki ngoba wena ngiyazizwa izwile inhlambe eyishiwe yimina. But oyizwange eyishiwo kuyena.
Ngizwile mama.
Uzwile inhlambe angitsho
ngawo ngithi akahoxise axolise kuloko akushilo. Ngakho ke sengicela nakuwena ke ukuthi ngicela ukuthi uxolise uhoxise amagama akho unconditionally ma.
Ngiyaxolisa sihlalo ngokukhulu ukuhlonipha wena. But ngicela umtshela ukuthi anganginaki angizelanga yena la. Ngiyaxolisa amahlobo ngiyazi ukuthi akufanele ngikhulume kubeze kubeke phezulu kodwa ngicela nje umkhuzi ukuthi akazi into ayizele la eParliament nothi kuzobheka omunye umuntu.
Sesizwele ke ma. Thank you, honorable members. Can I also make a humble plea to our guests? You are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen. But you are not expected to participate with us by clapping hands, no matter how entertaining it is. If you feel that you really have an edge to laugh out loud, please go out, laugh a lot, and then come back and be quiet. Or just smile. But participation is not allowed from your side, ladies and gentlemen. I had a few hands. Makaula, can I take a member from the EFF? She had raised her hand. Yebo, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. and
Yes,
thank
what
you
is your
for-
point of order?
Thank you for your ruling. No, you have made a ruling and we will adhere to that ruling. But saying so, that member must never be allowed to threaten Mam Kaula like that, verbally and even making hand gestures. And if guests can also not behave, they must leave because we are at work. We have every obligation to also protect these debates that we are coming to attend. Secondly, we have been talking this thing of the language several times, and we all know that Mam Kaula is challenged pertaining to her languages. So why is it now an issue that we are suggesting that she must get Zulu translation? If we can't sort this thing out of the translation each and every time when we are having debates, it must stop. We can't have this continuous asking for translation, and then a clown just comes up and say Mam Kaula is dumb. It must never
Honorable
be
member,
allowed.
thank you very much. That's the other thing that I would like to make an appeal to you about, ladies and gentlemen. Say your point of order, substantiate it, and make it as short as possible. There was a hand, honorable member, you have raised a hand. Maybe would you like to say something?
Honorables, House Chair.
Honorable member.
Is it parliamentary to call a person in this house that is a clown, or is it a privilege for the EFF to refer to me as a clown? Do they have that particular specific privilege for that honorable smiling after she said, I'm a clown?
Honorable member, I am not certain about whether it is unparliamentary or not, but I will go and check, Hansard, or get more advice and come back to you. But at times, words can be parliamentary and yet unacceptable. So we will look into that and come back to you. The question of the translation, Honorable Makaula, basayo ibheka mama. Ibikhona ku number 1 channel kodwa yahambile futhi. So basayo ibheka. Ngicela siqhubeke Honorable Makwanisha.
Thank you very much, House Chair. These baseline cuts do not only affect the Department of Correctional Services, but may also affect court hours if there are no reliable vehicles to transport inmates to courts. They also affect local municipalities who supply services to the department if they are paid late. Honorable Chairperson, we agree with the Minister that the Correctional Services Act requires a review. One of the pressing issues is that the review should be the financial and operational independence of the Judicial Inspectorate of Correctional Services. Rule 83 of the United Nations Mandela Rules provides for a twofold system of regular inspections of correctional centers. One internal conducted by the Central Administration of Correctional Services, and another one external conducted by a body independent of the Correctional Services Administration. Rule 83 further provides that the objective of the inspection shall be to ensure that prisons are managed in accordance with existing laws, regulations, policies, and procedures with a view to bringing about the objectives of a penal and correctional services, and that the rights of prisoners are protected. We have to, as a country, develop a clear model of external inspections which provide for the operational and financial independence of jigs. We would like to acknowledge the work of the Constitutional Court justices on prison visits. Since 2010, the Constitutional Court justices have visited hundreds of correctional centers across the country, where they conducted inspections on conditions of incarceration and compiled reports. These reports are made available in the Constitutional Court's website and sent to the Minister, jigs, and the committee with a recommendation for intervention. The last report was received last week from Justice Johan Frohnman regarding his visit to St. Alban's Correctional Center in Port Elizabeth. The committee will soon consider this report and look at other reports sent by the justices of the Constitutional Court to come up with a clear oversight plan. As part of the measures to review the Correctional Services Act, there is also a need to review our parole system to comply with the recent judgment of the Constitutional Court in Phala versus Minister of Justice and Correctional Services and another of 2019 to ensure that parolees are treated equitably. Last year, the Department of Correctional Services reported that it was developing a review paper on the parole system. During this financial year, we will invite the Department of Correctional Services to brief the committee on this review paper. Honorable members, there is a strong need to improve procurement supply chain management in the Department of Correctional Services. Investigations being conducted by the Special Investigative Unit relating to the electronic monitoring system, the integrated inmate management system, and fencing have stalled the implementation of these very important projects. The integrated inmate management system is key in ensuring the management of offender information across all the 243 correctional centers, linking such information with the courts and the police. We expect that appropriate action will be taken against those involved in any wrongdoing when these investigations are finalized. In its report, the committee has also noted that the department incurred irregular expenditure of 1.8 billion in 2017-2018. The committee urges the minister to heighten his oversight on the governance and internal control environment of the Department of Correctional Services to ensure that audit action plans and Auditor General's remedial measures are implemented. The committee has further recommended that the department considers developing some measurable performance indicators and targets for the Assurance Services sub-program, as this could assist the Department of Correctional Services to implement its audit action plans and to achieve clean audit in the future. Lastly, Chairperson, I would like to, on behalf of the committee, acknowledge the hard work of all the committed Department of Correctional Services employees across the 243 correctional and remand detention facilities. We acknowledge their dedication under very difficult conditions. We welcome and support the department's plan and budget for 2019-2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Now, Honorable Self from the DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. We would like to associate ourselves with the tribute paid by the Minister to the late Johnny Clegg, who was a great musician and a great South African. The Department of Correctional Services is a fully fledged government department. It employs about 39,000 employees, cares for about 166,000 inmates, and about 75,000 parolees and probationers. What happens, therefore, in the DCS matters, and we as MPs should be seized with the department's challenges and its problems. So while we welcome the fact that the ministry is responsible for both justice and correctional services, because there's lots of synergies between them, Parliament cannot properly exercise its oversight functions without a standalone portfolio committee for correctional services, or at very least a subcommittee of the Justice Committee. The experience of the Fifth Parliament underscored this fact. The DCS was left dangling in the wind with very little or no oversight. We welcome the chairperson's commitment that there will be more oversight, but he and I were both at the briefing that the minister gave, outlining the legislative program of the committee, and once the legislative program gets going, there's very little time for the sort of oversight that needs to take place in a department like the DCS. Oh yes, an empty vessel makes the most noise. One of the consequences of this is that the DCS has a reputation for being a place where corruption flourishes. The Portfolio Committee was briefed on the Bosasa scandal
Honourable
as
members, let's
early.
not be loud. We are allowed to heckle, but not to drown the speaker.
Thank you, Chair. As I was saying, the Portfolio Committee was briefed on the Bosasa scandal as early as 2009, yet no action was taken at all. Indeed, the contract was renewed thereafter, despite what the Special Investigating Unit discovered in that connection. The same is true of the South African Gate and Fence contract. The same is true of the contract that was awarded at vast cost for inmate tracking devices. But for Parliament to fulfill its responsibilities, the Portfolio Committee needs to be rigorous and independent. Part of the reason that the DCS allows itself to be used and abused by Bosasa was that the Portfolio Committee was chaired by a member who himself received gratuities from Bosasa. It is not only the state that was captured, Parliament was nearly captured as well, and that is a thing that we need to take very seriously. Now, the biggest challenge facing the DCS was, and still remains, overcrowding. Across the entire department, overcrowding sits at around 140%. Roughly 1/3 of our prisons are overcrowded. Many more are more than 200% overcrowded. Sun City, for example, sits at 233% overcrowding. This makes enforcing discipline very difficult, if not impossible. In most of these cases, it is the gangs that are in control, and offenders emerge better trained criminals on their release than when they were incarcerated in the first place. Overcrowding also constitutes a huge security risk to the DCS officials working at the coalface, that is, in the sections. We salute the many brave officials who work under difficult and dangerous circumstances. South Africa has one of the highest imprisonment rates in the world, at 286 prisoners per 100,000 of population. So overcrowding remains the first and most urgent problem to be solved. Yet a solution has evaded us for at least the last 50 years. Shortly after democracy, and again in 2005, special presidential remissions of sentences were declared. These resulted in short-term relief, but soon occupancy climbed again. Overcrowding is fueled by large numbers of remand detainees who cannot post bail, by the minimum sentencing regime which keeps offenders in prison even after they have been as rehabilitated as they ever will be in the facility, by repeat offending by people who, because of their criminal records, cannot find work out after their release, and by the overuse of short sentences by magistrates. The principle should be, in all our prisons, that prisons work where prisoners work, and therefore every prisoner should, as far as possible, be either studying, working, or engaged in a rehabilitation program for 8 hours of every day. Now, but there are many thousands of offenders serving sentences of less than 2 years. Such offenders receive absolutely no rehabilitation programs. They simply sit while they are tutored by gangsters to be better criminals. It is not clear whether a sentence of 2 years or less serves as any deterrent at all. So we must think out of the box. We must dare to do things differently. Now, the President is the chief author of the National Development Plan. About overcrowding, the NDP has the following to say, and I quote, "The best practical and necessary way to address overcrowding is through assessment, categorization, and placement of prisoners in and out of prison sentence programs and correctional supervision based on clearly defined and objective criteria. Alternative sentencing regimes should be addressed with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the efficiency thereof monitored on a regular basis," unquote. So here's what could be done. First, we require a revamped and thoroughly professional community corrections branch that commands the confidence of the judiciary, who will make sure that out-of-prison sentences are carried out to the letter. We need to resource this branch properly so that it carry out its functions properly. Secondly, we need a suite of alternative sentences, community service, house arrest, fines, and so on, which should be imposed instead of imprisonment, particularly for first-time, young and non-violent offenders. Moreover, any judicial officer should have to provide compelling reasons why he or she imposed a sentence of imprisonment for less than 2 years instead of a non-custodial sentence. Thirdly, we should conclude prison transfer agreements with a SADC bloc, which would see sentenced inmates serving out their sentences in their land of nationality rather than here in South Africa. When I last asked the question, there are about 12,000 inmates from SADC countries serving sentences in South African prisons. Fifthly, as a nation, we need to have an honest conversation about minimum sentences and the minimum proportion of a sentence that an inmate must serve before becoming eligible for parole. One absolutely understands the rage and disgust of society at the wave of crime that has confronted us. But there is also an understandable desire for vengeance. But a prisoner sentenced for life is unlikely to be any more rehabilitated after 25 years, which is the minimum period they must serve before they become eligible for parole, than he or she will be after, say, 15 years or 20 years. It depends on the individual and the careful and professional assessment of whether or not he or she is likely to reoffend. While on the subject of release on parole, it is very important that the correctional services facilities informs the police when people are due to be released on parole or probation, because there's a definite knock-on effect when the release of some offenders go back onto the streets, go back into the gangs, and start gang warfare. And in this connection, the latest tragedy in the Cape Flats is something that we should take very careful cognizance of. Finally, we also need to have an honest conversation about the possible expungement of criminal records. Again, principally for the young, first-time and non-violent offenders. This would have to be very carefully and professionally done, but it is very difficult to find a job in South Africa under any circumstances today, and with a criminal record, it's virtually impossible. So no matter how successfully an inmate participates in rehabilitation programs, no matter how reformed or reskilled that person is on release, jobs are simply not available with a criminal record. And such people inevitably reoffend and return having committed more and more serious offenses. These, I admit, are very difficult and complex issues which are not very popular with the public for understandable reasons. But unless we can solve them and solve them in a constructive way, our prisons will remain universities of serious crime. I thank you.
Honorable Mulaud from EFF.
Ndithome ngorumelisa mudzulatshidulo wo minister washu wo Lamula na va Msanda vashu vo Holomise rine va EFF a ri khou tikedza mu reporto heyi. Chairperson, the Department of Correctional Services is supposed to be a leading in rehabilitation and correcting the behavior of criminals and found on those who are on the wrong side of the law. Wo Minister jele zashu ndili fasi la zwigevenga ndi shango line khalo ho tshinyala vhukuma ngori ho tshinyala system ya vhafariwa ha dovha ha tshinyala na vhafariwa na vhalangi vhafariwa vhoṱhe na vhaofisiri vhoṱhe vha khou ita vhuaḓa vhuhulwane kha dzi dzhele dzashu zwine zwa kombetshedza zwa uri vhafariwa vha bve vha songo rehabilitatwa zwavhuḓi. We heard earlier on this year about how senior officer of the department used Bosasa looting money under the prospect of providing service in the prisons. This is a thorny issue, Minister. Only a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, we had a report that 5,000 chicken and dozens of pigs from farms situated inside the St. Albans and Middle Drift prison in Eastern Cape were stolen. These were used to feed prisoners, and it does not need a rocket science to figure who stole them. Those are the officials of the department who are stealing food in the prison farms. Vana vashu vaswa vo ḓala ngedzi prison zwino zwi ita zwa dzi prison dzashu dzo ḓala nga vhana vaswa zwi fhedza zwi khou pfumisa vhathu vhane vha vha na dzi company dzo rehabilitate vhafariwa. While this is a case, our prison facilities are turning petty criminals into a hardcore criminals who come out of system to be a thorn in the society. According to the Judiciary Inspectorate for Correctional Services, JICS, South African prisons have a population of more than 160,000 inmates, 16 of whom are serving life sentence. There are only 119,000 bed spaces available in our prison at the moment, meaning that the correctional services are overcrowded by over 40,000 prisoners. And majority of these inmates are remanded detainees who could be released on bail if we had a properly functioning lower courts. It cost the department over 123,000 per annum for one inmate to keep him in jail. Most of these inmates live in overcrowded condition, driving most of them various forms of illness, most notably mental illness. The report from JICS last year indicated that 1,200 inmates had diagnosed with some form of mental illness during its inspection. And most of these inmates received no special medical care and were treated at the prison and kept with general population. Consequences, almost 40% of death in prison are resulting from suicide. On the other hand, thousands of young black people who most are remanded for petty crimes will have their lives changed permanently inside a very wrong system of the correctional services. This situation cannot continue any longer, and the state must commit to doing the following. Do a very urgent audit of the seriousness of crimes of remanded detainees and release from prison all those who had committed petty crimes. Increase the funding and the mandate of JICS to allow it to be thorough in its work of inspecting prisons and holding the department accountable by giving constructive input to the department. But sufficient capacity to handle mental illness cases in prisons must be built. Transform correctional services to include compulsory education and skilling for all prisoners. This will be followed by the scrapping of the criminal record status of ex-convicts who were convicted of certain schedule of crimes depending on the seriousness of the crime committed. Ensure that no correctional services facility or program is run by the private, cooperative, and company, as these are not interested in the well-being of the inmates but in making profits. Cancel all catering contracts and make sure that inmates themselves engage in productive work such as agriculture and other, get trained to cook for the prison in which they are held. Provide incentive to protect me, Chairperson, from this hooliganism.
Honorable Janji, your voice is too loud. It's disturbing the speaker.
Oh, thanks, Chairperson. Provide incentive to
Remember, I have protected so I don't expect you to. Honorable Kaula, you will not do that with me presiding. Yes.
Providing incentive to inmates to engage in productive and corrective activities and those who embark on personal improvement activities such as formal studies. Provide regular medical checkup for inmates to ensure that illness, particularly mental illness, are picked up early and that inmates get given the necessary treatment for this illness. Root out gangsterism inside prison by betting stricter with the prison warders. This must include regular rotation of warders in between prison to ensure that no warder gets to stay in one prison and be familiar with inmates. Over and above this, Minister, all those involved in tender corruption who are officials of the department must be jailed as soon as possible. The department needs to forge partnership with TVET colleges to provide hands-on training for inmates so that they get out of system better equipped to lead meaningful life. Minister, we also have a concern about the budget cut on funded posts, 2,815 posts in this financial year. They won't be filled because the budget were cut. We also welcome the termination of AGO and all Bosasa link contracts to facilities. So we want to applaud the commissioner and his team for first establishment, the insourcing of nutrition services to 26 centers. We have a concern about the consequence management with respect of special investigation unit report of 1.5 billion out of the contracts which was issued illegally for EMS and integrated inmates management system and project management. Also, the 37% of overcrowding is a meaning of concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Msimang from the IFP.
Honorable Chair, let me start with a quote. No one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails, end of quote. This was written by South African most famous ex-prisoner, Utatu Matiba. Overcrowding, infectious diseases, unnatural deaths, these are a few of the realities that plague prisoners inside our jails daily. In 2014, during the budget vote, it was admitted that overcrowding was a serious problem that was being faced in South African prisons. It is now 2019, and overcrowding is still a significant issue being faced by prisons throughout the country. The overcrowding issue not only brings to light the inadequacies of our current justice system, but shows lack of accountability. To address this issue of overcrowding, there needs to be a more effective criminal justice system in order to deter people from committing crimes. There also needs to be and more successful rehabilitation programs, as overcrowding is significantly related to the failure to adequately rehabilitate offenders, creating a dangerous cycle, resulting in most criminals returning to prison after being released. This is clear in the estimate that 85 to 94% of inmates in our country re-offend after their release. This must be addressed, and effective rehabilitation programs should be implemented to ensure that the fight against crime is not counterproductive. President Ramaphosa, in his SONA address, promised to reduce crimes by half by 2030. But crime is rife and on the increase. It is not helped by the current economic growth, as people turn to crime out of desperation, which hampers any progress in changing the mindset of offenders and would-be offenders to commit crime. Overcrowding is a serious problem in the executional, and it exacerbates the possibility of contracting infectious disease such as TB and HIV. Our prisons also fail to adequately provide care for those suffering from mental illness. The overcrowding problem further complicates the access to psychological service, which are largely inaccessible due to our congested system. Finally, we have been made aware of another example that needs to be managed by the correctional service system through better monitoring and stricter controls. In the Westville prison in Durban, we have been made aware that certain inmates demand cell phone numbers of parents of first offenders. They then phone the mother or other vulnerable family member of the offender and put the phone on loudspeaker when they demand money from the mother while they are torturing the offender. They give an ultimatum to the family member that if money is not received, the offender will be killed. Parents or spouses become victims of the system and subsequently face mental, psychological, and emotional torture in this regard. What is worse is that many of these parents do not have the kind of money that is demanded. They end up getting loans, often through loan sharks, to save the lives of their children. The IFP calls for the urgent collaboration between the various departments such as Public Works, Health, Social Development, and this department to address these above-mentioned issues. The IFP supports the budget vote. Thank you.
The next speaker is FF Plus, Honorable Mulder.
Thank you, House Chair. Agbare voorsitter, minister Amola, adjunct minister Olomisa, Jeffrey, Amstraals van die departement en almal teenwoordig. Elke gemeenskap en elke dorp het sy stoutkinders. Mense soos ons, elkeen van hulle deur omstandighede in hul kinderjare gevorm of deur gebeure in hul grootwordjare en deur eksterne faktore wat hul gedrag op een of ander wyse beïnvloed. Vir 'n gemeenskap om te oorleef moet daar egte reëls wees. Mense het grense nodig en mense reageer verskillend op hierdie riglyne en beperkings. Voorsitter, die departement korrektiewe dienste moet deel met die gevolge van mense wat hulself nie by daardie reëls kan hou nie en wat deur die samelewing ingestel word. Die Suid-Afrikaanse samelewing raak toenemend misdadig en gewelddadig daarbij, waardeur hierdie mense dan in aanhouding beland en word die gevestigde misdaadkultuur voorgesit. Honorable Minister Amola, the Freedom Front Plus will support your drive to equip inmates with agricultural skills, training in the cultivation of vegetables, fruits, milk, and meat production and other technical skills. This is like it used to be years ago and how it should be. Skills, self-sufficiency, and independence is one of the greatest gifts that one can give. This initiative will indeed contribute towards the transformation of South African correctional centers from being having of drug and gang syndicates into proper rehabilitation centers and skills development centers. It will also contribute towards a more skilled workforce in the South African economy. The Freedom Front Plus is concerned that the allocation of 1.9 billion rand to the rehabilitation program, only 8% of the total amount is allocated, is inadequate. The Freedom Front Plus also welcomes the swift cancellation of the AGO-BOSASA contracts and the insourcing of nutrition services in 26 centers in which this company operated, following the allegations of corruption in the Zondo Commission. However, we are concerned about the failure of the executives to fulfill its oversight role in this regard, as well as the irregular expenditure of 1.8 billion rand in 2017-18. The new minister should be heightening his oversight on this governance and internal control environment of the department to ensure that audit action plans and the Auditor General remedial measures are implemented. The department has continuously failed to achieve many of its targets that are directed at improving security conditions by reducing the number of escapes, violence, and unnatural deaths. I mentioned earlier that the Department of Correctional Services have to deal with the result of an increasing crime-ridden society. Economic growth, job creation, effective education, law enforcement, a proper criminal justice system, and above all, moral regeneration will contribute toward less crime and less inmates. The increasing inmate population and overcrowding of 30% as of March 2019 is a real concern. The allocated amount to the Department of Correctional Services for 2019-20 of 25 billion rand is inadequate and will pose huge challenges to the department to carry out its mandate. Honourable Minister, through you, Chair, ek het gehoor en geluister na wat al die lede in die huis gesê het vandag en ek kan hoor dat almal presies dieselfde gedagte het, dieselfde voel. Die mense wat in die tronke van Suid-Afrika sit in die gevangenis is almal mense. Hulle verdien rehabilitasie, buitenstraf en behoort menswaardig behandel te word. Ek dink ons kan almal sê dat ons sê vir u baie sterkte met die termyn wat vir u voorlê. Baie dankie.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, responsible for correctional services, Honorable Olomis.
Honorable House Chairperson Mkwati, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services Ronald Ozi Lamola, Deputy Minister John Jeffrey, and any other ministers and deputy ministers who may be here. Chairperson of and members of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services, honorable members, National Commissioner for Correctional Services, Mr. Arthur Fraser, and senior management of DCS, distinguished guests, especially my wife, Nosimanye, and my uncles, and clan members coming all the way from Mkanduli. Inkosi Magebe ngokuza kusisithi umhlana nitsho nibone ukuba senza kanjani sisebenza kanjani kweli Kapa na ugqiba ukusivotela. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Ndandilambile anandipha kutya. Ndandize anandambesa. Ndandisentolongweni anandivelela. I stand before you today at a historic time in our beloved country. This July, Mandela Month, is particularly symbolic as it coincides with South Africa's 25 years of democracy. Mandela Day, tomorrow, 18 July, coincidentally the birthday of the Agebe clan Crown Prince Jongum Sobomvu, calls on us all every day to make the world a better place. Through our daily actions, we must be inspired by Madiba's belief in a society characterized by justice, dignity, and human rights. The advent of a democratic South Africa introduced a paradigm shift, a new beginning, where prisons became correctional centers of rehabilitation. Offenders are given a second chance, a new hope, and encouragement to adopt the lifestyle of ideal members of society. Rehabilitation requires a smart, dynamic, responsive, and futuristic criminal justice system, correctional services being an integral part of the whole. As everybody is inspired by Madiba, he did say this: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It is in that vein that we, as a department, promote comprehensive education programs, which do not only minimize the negative impact of incarceration, but serve to improve prospects of reintegration, self-esteem, and high morale. As part of Reading with Meaning, this year marks the 10th anniversary of Funda Mzansi, a reading festival aimed at encouraging offenders to read and write. Members, to achieve a society characterized by justice, one of the focus areas of the department is to stamp out corruption within its ranks. During the last financial year, the department conducted 32 disciplinary actions against officials involved in corrupt activities. This resulted in the dismissal of 17 officials, the suspension without salary as an alternative to dismissal of 5 officials, final written warnings to 5 officials, and written warnings to 4 officials. 5 officials resigned before their hearings could be finalized, whilst 1 was found not guilty. In line with the public service regulations, the department is reviewing the structure and aligning strategic priorities with core competencies. Compliance with applicable legislation through available human resources will be negatively impacted, and so will the business and governance of the department, as has been commented by other members. Ladies and gentlemen, DCS operates within a complex environment and delivers upon a broad mandate that is progressive and holistic in terms of the incarceration, rehabilitation, and social reintegration of remand detainees and sentenced offenders. A service delivery model for DCS has been developed to respond to the mandate of the department and is aligned to the Department of Public Service and Administration Operations Management Framework. The total compensation of employees' baseline budget cuts from the 2015-2016 financial year to the 2020-2021 financial year amounts to 3.1 billion rand. Currently, the funded post establishment in the department sits at 39,191 posts. 866 posts had to be abolished to accommodate funding for case management committees and the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services. The budget cuts under goods and services have also put immense pressure on the operational budget for both correctional centers and administration. One of the major areas negatively impacted upon is fleet services used for the transportation of sentenced offenders to courts and hospitals, the monitoring of parolees and probationers, as well as the transportation of officials to perform their daily functions. Corrections is a calling which requires a special cadre of officials, one who is grounded on the values of moral rectitude and integrity. It is indeed a fact that correctional officials are courageous professionals who work in a challenging environment with risk to life and limb at a premium at times. The murder, for instance, of Ms. Nomsa Joyce Stirman by a male inmate at Hoodwinked Correctional Center in March this year exposed the incredible dangers that confront our officials, particularly female officials. The sacrifices that our officials endure, their service offering, are all driven by a passion and the obligation to ensure the safety of our communities and the nation at large. It is therefore our sacred duty to ensure that the name and memory of Nomsa Joyce Stearman are remembered and honored for posterity as those of a fallen soldier. We are encouraged by the progress made thus far by the South African Police Service on the investigation of the case of the murder of Ms. Stearman. It remains our resolve and determination to see to it that justice is served in this unfortunate matter. The Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services recognizes that its human resources are its most valuable asset. Whilst we confront the realities of a constrained economy and the budget restrictions it imposes, we remain committed to creating employment and development opportunities, especially for young persons. We are aware that with every employment opportunity created, an entire family benefits and the negative impact of the cycle of poverty is reduced. We have recalibrated our processes of filling vacant posts to be far more efficient with quicker turnaround times. We take courage from the collaborative relationship we enjoy with organized labor. The department is required to change and adapt its security training and capabilities in order to respond to the evolving security risks and threats. Over the past 4 years, DCS has rolled out basic and tactical training to 3,556 emergency support team officials, as well as 6,520 officials on security equipment in the same period. The total payments for capital assets baseline budget cuts from the 2015-2016 financial year to the 2020-2021 financial year amount to 847 million rand. It is imperative that we become innovative and ingenious to ensure that our infrastructure delivery program remains on track in spite of the budgetary limitations. Therefore, an urgent need exists to consistently assess the status of our facilities to ensure accessibility, performance, and functionality in terms of our safety standards. With the shift and emphasis on rehabilitation in post-apartheid South Africa, it should be noted that all centers which were constructed during the apartheid era do not fully cater for rehabilitation programs. They do not have facilities for the rendering of developmental and psychosocial group programs. The department suffers from a chronic shortage of bed spaces that leads to overcrowding in our correctional centers. Whilst there are multi-pronged strategies to deal with this matter, it should always be given careful consideration when custodial and non-custodial sentences are imposed. We are continuing with the migration from incarceration towards a fully fledged rehabilitation service as an integral part of an integrated criminal justice system. Inmates are skilled through working in the different departmental workshops, which include wood, steel, and textiles workshops, bakeries, a shoe factory, and agriculture facilities. Our workshops are in a position to confidently manufacture products that can be procured by other government departments and institutions. The department also manages 21 farms and 115 small gardens that are being used for self-sufficiency and to provide work opportunities for offenders. South Africa is at a stage where it requires a correctional system which works together with communities to reduce offending. An inmate has to commit to change and embrace opportunities for skills development, which will result in meaningful reintegration into society. We need to understand that offenders go into a correctional facility as punishment, not for punishment. Hence today you have centers of new beginnings, where the spirit of humanity, hope, and aspiration prevails. We opted for such a paradigm shift so that those in our centers must know that there is a road to a better life. The Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services is an important office that ensures accountability through external scrutiny. In conjunction with JICS, the department is continuing to urgently address issues that may hamper its effectiveness. DCS has put in place short, medium, and long-term plans, including increasing JICS infrastructure footprint. The Department of Correctional Services reaffirms its commitment to modernize its correctional systems by replacing all legacy systems with reliable, integrated, and secure information and communication technology infrastructure and business application systems. Central to this modernization is the development and implementation of the integrated inmate management system, which, as part of the integrated justice system, provides a single view of inmate and offender information. The upgrade of the ICT network infrastructure will take place over the next 3 years. The establishment of a security committee helps to manage security risks and the alignment of security procedures across all 243 centers in the country. However, security breaches still occur, and we must, as part of redress in this administration, rethink how we classify or categorize inmates as either low or high-risk offenders. During 2018-2019, the department achieved outstanding performance outcomes in respect of the 70,532 probationers and parolees caseload of community corrections. From the daily average caseload of 55,030 parolees, 99% complied with their conditions, and from a daily average of caseload of 15,502 probationers, 99% complied with their conditions. Victim participation through the different restorative justice interventions has gained momentum, and this approach continues to bring offenders and their victims, including communities, together to talk about the impact of the crime they committed. Corrections is indeed a societal responsibility. The department established a number of strategic and sustainable partnerships with other government departments, business against crime organizations, civil society organizations, and non-profit organizations. We have also formalized partnerships with state agencies, non-profit organizations, as well as institutions of higher learning. This is aimed at enhancing the employability of parolees and probationers through training on various programs. A total of 27,699 parolees and probationers participated in community projects through such partnerships in the year 2018-2019. There are currently 218 fully fledged community corrections offices nationally, serving the respective communities and offenders under the system of community corrections. These offices enable probationers and parolees to access community correction services within the communities where they reside. In an effort to increase access, especially in remote areas, the department has established service points throughout the country by formalizing partnerships with non-profit organizations. In this regard, in order to ensure ease of access, ownership, and collaboration, it is incumbent upon us to reach out and form partnerships with traditional leaders across the length and breadth of this country by taking advantage of the existing traditional councils infrastructure. As Minister has already indicated, there are beautiful products of the work of our inmates, parolees, and probationers on display in our exhibition area. Do please go and take a look at them. You will be pleasantly surprised. In the spirit of Madiba and restorative justice, tomorrow I shall be handing over to the elderly residents of Sal Berau Retirement Village at Elsis River beanies, scarves, blankets made by Siaka Knitting Project. On that note, let me take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Minister Lamola for collegial and comradely leadership and support. Let me also appreciate the National Commissioner, his management and staff of the department for the reception and the orientation I have received. The support we get from the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services is not taken for granted. Umtu akalahlwa. Thank you.
Honorable Olomisa. Next is ACDP, Honorable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. May we also congratulate the Deputy Minister on his appointment, and we greet the Minister and the Commissioner and the members of the department and JICs that are here today. Now, the ACDP appreciates, like other speakers have said, that the department is facing severe budgetary constraints, and this has resulted in reduced funding posts, and this will, as the department indicated, have severe implications for both the business and governance of the department. And this may also affect frontline service delivery and worsen safety and conditions of incarceration. And we saw that in the last Parliament when we visited some of the prisons. We visited St. Albans and others, and we could see the challenges that many of the wardens are faced with, and this needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Minister, we also, and Chairperson of the committee, we also share concerns expressed about oversight and the fact that this committee now looks over, and as in the previous Parliament, correctional services and justice, and we look forward to subcommittees that will be able to exercise efficient and effective oversight over correctional services and visit more prisons. We also, as the ACDP, have long held the view that increased usage should be made of offender labor, skilled labor, teaching offenders to be skilled, to deal with minor maintenance issues and other projects, and we were pleased to hear about a school that had been built as well. And this can result in self-sufficiency in prisons. We are pleased about the farms, the workshops that are there, but when we visited one of the workshops, it was being underutilized, and so we need to fully utilize our workshops to generate revenue. And Minister, we should also look, if we've got budgetary constraints, Deputy Minister, surely the revenue that is obtained should be channeled to the department and not to the central fiscus. This is something that needs to be looked into as well. We, like other speakers, also commend the Commissioner on the speedy action that was taken following the startling allegations of corruption disclosed at the Zonda Commission regarding the Basasa contracts and insourcing and dealing with that. Just imagine if catering had been stopped in the prisons, you would have had riots. The question, however, is why action was only taken now, when the SI unit and the report was tabled almost 10 years ago. And it seems that action was only taken by the Hawks when this evidence was presented 10 years later at the Zonda Commission. We also are concerned that for several years the department has not been able to set up the additional bed spaces. This has been a result of delays in capital projects being completed. And even in the last Parliament, we suggested that the Minister should meet with the Minister of Public Works and resolve these issues, but there's a continuation of challenges from the Department of Public Works that is impacting on the correctional services. And this, in turn, of course, results in overcrowding. And listening to all the members speaking today, it sounded like my speech at correctional services 20 years ago. Whilst the situation has improved, Chairperson, you'll remember, we've always spoken about overcrowding, overcrowding, overcrowding. This department is a recipient of the criminal justice system. And so we need to look at this situation of overcrowding. We need to look at Section 63A, Section 62F of the Criminal Procedure Act, as well as Section 49G of the Correctional Services Act, which seeks to limit the period of time that an accused is remanded in detention. Of course, we from the ACDP side have, since I was elected in 1999, stood for restorative justice, and we're pleased at the progress that has been made with those programs. It is key that our rehabilitation budgets cannot be underfunded, and restorative justice so that our offenders can take up a responsible role in our communities, and that is fully supported. And so whilst the department faces many challenges, we from the ACDP thank all the managers, the staff, who are in extremely difficult and dangerous conditions, diligently do their work in ensuring that offenders are kept safe, secure, and in humane custody and undergo rehabilitation programs. I thank you.
UDM. Oh, ADM. Honorable Zungula.
Greetings to the chairperson, Minister, and congratulations, Deputy Minister, on your appointment. Correctional services should not be a one-sided affair, focusing just only on the individual, but it must be a holistical process where the person is rehabilitated, the community in which they've wronged is brought along in the process. And most importantly, the inmates should earn their way back into the communities through acts that benefit the communities. The following are the issues that are facing the correctional services system. Firstly, we have a system that does not segment criminals based on offenses, whether minor or major. We cannot have a situation, as the Deputy Minister spoke earlier on, where female prison warders are working in unsafe conditions that lead to either being raped or stabbed to death, just like what happened in March this year. The taxpayers are paying a hefty bill for the livelihood of prisoners inside the confinement, whereas law-abiding citizens live from hand to mouth. There is a severe shortage of skilled personnel to facilitate the rehabilitation process. As the ATM, we are proposing the following. Firstly, I want to commend the department for making use of the inmates for community projects. But we want to advocate for all of the 160,000 inmates to work for the state for free, because law-abiding citizens are working on a daily basis and their taxes are contributing towards the food, the shelter, as well as the education of the inmates. This will ensure all inmates are skilled when reintegrated back to society after serving their time. Izandla ziyahlambana. As the community is contributing towards the livelihood of the inmates must contribute towards the livelihood of the communities as well. Criminals have to be segmented and categorized according to the offenses they have committed. Common assault convicts should not be mixed with hardened criminals. And crime has taken a rise. Immoral humans are going around killing law-abiding citizens for fun. As a means of countering this, as the ATM, we are still advocating for the introduction of a justice-based capital punishment system. If a person is not willing to coexist amongst other people, that person must be punished ngokwalendlela. Because you cannot rape an 8-month baby. You cannot kill defenseless homeless people and think that just by being taken to jail, to the correctional centers, you will be rehabilitated. As well, we want the elevation of the African law to be on par with the Roman Dutch law, as this will result in the desirable balance between curative and punitive aspects of these laws, respectively. Lastly, dealing with the fundamental societal problems, particularly the values, morality and ethics, eradication of poverty through enabling sustainable livelihoods will go a long way to diminish prison population. As the ATM siyayixhasa le budget. Enkosi.
Honorable Maseko Jele from the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The history of correctional service, correctional system in South Africa can be traced back to former colonial times when punishment of offenders was the sole purpose of imprisonment. During the colonial times, retribution was the only justification of punishment. Hence, some of our correctional facilities, which were built during apartheid, still reflects that. The belief that criminals deserve to be punished as repayment for their crimes is one of the oldest reactions to wrongdoing. The law of retaliation traces its origin as far back as the Code of Hammurabi, as well as the law of Moses in the Old Testament. Chairperson, the story of Joseph in the Bible, the son of Jacob, reminds us that he was once imprisoned, and he came out to be the second in charge in Egypt, right here in Africa. This story also reminds us that even if you can find yourself in prison, don't lose hope. Honorable members, the story of Joseph brings memories about our late icon, the father of our great nation, the late Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and came out to be the president of our country, this country. Both the story of Joseph and the late Nelson Mandela shows us that even if you have been imprisoned, you can still be a respectable leader in society upon release. Chairperson, this debate takes place a day before the world celebrates Mandela Day, as it was indicated earlier. We would like to encourage everyone to remember this great leader and the giant of our beloved movement by doing something positive for humanity and contribute their time to assist those who are less fortunate. This debate also takes place in a month of July. This is the month when Solomon Kalu Shima was born in 1956. When the apartheid government hanged him in April 1979, he said, I quote, "My blood will nourish the tree that will bear the fruit of freedom. Tell my people that I love
Honorable
them.
members, no.
They must continue the fight." Honorable members, the penal system in South Africa has undergone a radical change from prison system during apartheid to correctional system under the ANC government. These changes reflected the ANC desire to move from punishment to rehabilitation of offenders. The transition was informed by the Freedom Charter, which was adopted at the Congress of the People at Kliptown in 1959. The Freedom Charter says, imprisonment shall be only for serious crimes against the people and shall aim at re-education, not vengeance. This is why under the ANC government, the correctional system in South Africa has moved from retribution to rehabilitation of offenders in their care. Section 35, subsection 2E of the Constitution provides that everyone who is detained, including every sentenced prisoner, has the right to conditions of detention that are consistent with human dignity. All efforts should be made to ensure that rehabilitation of offenders takes place in a conducive environment. The Department of Correctional Services is indeed on track in transforming prisons into effective rehabilitation centers. A good example, the minister visited 2 weeks ago, is Bosbeck Correctional Center in Gauteng. The Bosbeck Productive Workshop is one of the biggest in the Department of Correctional Services. The workshop started in 1993 and has developed a new range of furniture and has also extended its services and training skills for offenders to be equipped with skills in textile industry, bakery, powder coating, agriculture, and horticulture, as an example. Chairperson, we are aware of the number of partnerships the department has formalized with other sister departments, civil society organizations, academic institutions, and other relevant external stakeholders to assist with developing and implementing rehabilitation programs in correctional facilities across the country. This is in line with the white paper on corrections, 2005, which states that corrections is a societal responsibility. In February 2013, the department signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Basic Education to use offender labor to build schools and supply furniture as a good gesture of giving back to the community they have wronged. In this MOU, the responsibility of DCS includes, amongst others, manufacturing and delivery of school furniture, rehabilitation of school furniture, construction of school infrastructure, maintenance and refurbishment of schools, and establishment of school gardens. No correctional system can achieve its objective if it does not have a range of healthy external partnership. To this end, the National Development Plan, Vision 2030, recommends that education, training, and skills development programs within correctional services should be increased. Business and the Department of Correctional Services should work together to proactively identify skills needs for development that would increase the chance of absorbing into economy after release. Honorable members, education is central to rehabilitation. Today, the department is reporting on the number of full-time schools in the correctional facilities, which has increased from 1 in 2009 to 16 in 2019. There is little doubt that literacy, simply being able to read and write, is one of the most critical skills needed to function in our current society. This is the reason why in 2013 the department announced, it was on the 1st of April 2013, it is compulsory for every inmate without a qualification equivalent to grade 9 to complete adult education and training, level 1 to 4. In 2017-18 financial year, approximately 10,996 offenders accessed education and training through adult education and training and further training program. In the same period, 142 learners passed grade 12 while incarcerated in correctional facilities across the country. We have also observed introduction of grade 12 for learners in Eguseni and Rustenburg youth centers in the previous year. Honorable Chair, social reintegration is one of the key programs in the Department of Correctional Services. One of the challenges faced by parolees during their reintegration back to the community is acceptance by their victims, their families, and the community in general. This challenge, if not properly addressed, has consequences of recidivism amongst ex-offenders. A study released in 2009 on ex-prisoners, views on imprisonment and re-entry conducted by Lucas Martin, also found that finding employment, re-establishing family relationship, reconnecting to community and society, and the lieu of the prison were some of the most challenging confronting ex-offenders upon release.
Your time is up.
As the ANC, sigulento yokwakha uMzansi Africa, we support the budget.
Thank you. Honorable Sibisi from NFP. Honorable Sibisi. Oh, it's not here. And then it's Honorable Hon from DA.
Voorsitter, oorbevolking is en bly een van die grootste struikelblokke tot rehabilitasie.
Honorable member, can you just give...
Would you kindly just remind the speaker
what
that
is
I'm
the-
speaking after him?
What?
Akhulu
No,
Nyathelo.
honorable member, sit down.
But
That's not a point of order. Continue, Honorable Horn.
You must go back to our.
voorsitter, nee, ek is wel bewus daarvan dat die agbare die handjie na my praat en ek is ook bewus daarvan dat dit sy nooiens toespraak is. So alle sterkte agbare die handjie.
Sorry, Slalo.
Honorable member, can you hold? What are you standing on?
Ngiyabonga mhlonishwa. Hayi, asile mfethu. Bheda kakhulu kunakuqala. I-Afrikaans le manje. Ngcono nane-English.
Okay.
Yabona nje nikhombisa ngempela nje ungasihloniphi la eParliament as a member of Parliament.
Honorable member, I have heard you. The message I got was that the issue of language was being attended to. And if it happens that it is not, then I'll engage the officials here. So I was told that some people were attending to it. They are saying they are checking again. But honorable members, we can't not proceed. But I think we have noted the concern. And yes, honorable member.
Ngiyabonga mhlonishwa. Ngokukhulu ukuhlonipha njengomama ohloniphayo. Kusho ukuthi mangicabanga. Yini pho esikhulumayo la kusho ukuthi asithi umuntu mangakalunga into zakhe angaboshwa. Angithi namanje nithi aqhubeke kusetshenzwe. Kodwa la siza ukuthi uthini. Lalelani asizile ukuzodlala la sizosebenza. Funa ngizwe ukuthi umhlonishwa lo ukuthi uthini. Yibuyela kule yanto ukuthi musani ukuthi la eSouth Africa sibe salwa silwela lama language libe lisigcinqa ngawo ngenkani.
Honorable Kalu, I have noted what you are saying, and I'm saying it's a technical problem now that is being attended. What I was suggesting, mhlawumbe ngendithetha nami ngeXhosa siyakuva kodwa sikuva kunjalo andazi noba uphakamisa uba simena ke ngoku kuba athi amagosa ayayihoya lento. Kodwa ke bendicebisa uba noko singemi.
Ngiyabonga mhlonishwa. Yazi into eyithanda kwena. Ngithanda lokhu nawe ukhuluma ngelanguage yabantu abakulethela eParliament. Lithi ke elami ke mhlonishwa. Asime ngoba nabo ngeke bavume lo sikhuluma lama language ethu bengeza ukuthi sithini. Angithi uyayizwa lonto. Njengokuthi mhlonishwa omuhle. Ngabe uyayikhumbula yini ukuthi ngathi kungani emabhenki abantu abamnyama aqashwe umuntu omhlophe kodwa bengayazi ilanguage yakhona kodwa omnyama ngeke aqashwe emsebenzini ifengayazi English
sendikubambileke masihlaleke ndisaza ufakana nje imilomo naba baphathi bala no hlala kaloku okay, kuthiwa ke Honorable Kalu baqalile ngoku makaqhube ngesibhulu sakhe iyatolika lento. Well, ndiyaxelelwa. Honorable member, can you proceed?
Dankie voorsitter. Oorbevolking, soos ek gesê het, bly een van die grootste struikelblokke tot rehabilitasie en gevonniste oortreders in Suid-Afrika, sowel as 'n ernstige bedreiging vir die veiligheid van beide oortreders en amptenare van die departement. Daarom, minister, moet u voorneme vandag om oorbevolking aan te spreek deur almal verwelkom word. Maar om die daad by die woord te voeg, sal makliker gesê as gedoen wees. Die probleme by korrektiewe dienste is ongelukkig sistemies van aard. Die harde werklikheid is dat die tipe korrupsie waar die Bosasa kontrakte in die kalkule gestel het, die reël is eerder as die uitsondering. Daar was byvoorbeeld ook die kontrak ter waarde van amper 400 miljoen rand wat toegeken is aan Integritron vir die ontwikkeling van 'n geïntegreerde bestuurstelsel. In misterieuse omstandighede is al 8 die ander tenders gediskwalifiseer tydens die evaluasieproses. Die kontrak is in stand gehou deur die voorganger ten spyte daarvan dat nasionale tesourie om daarteen gewaarsku het. Wat ons nou mee sit, is dat slegs 2 van die 8 teikens wat die departement gestel het, teen nou behaal is. 'n Projek wat voltooi moes wees, is steeds slegs operasioneel by die loodsfasiliteite. En wat erger nog is, voorsitter, is die argelose manier waarop korrektiewe dienste tydens sy voorlegging aan die portefeulje komitee vrae hieroor afgemaak het. So, Chair, there was also the pilot project for the electronic tagging of parolees, awarded in an irregular manner, the subject of an SIU investigation to try and recover yet another 400 million rand. Unfortunately, electronic tagging aborted now by DCS, despite the fact that it's obviously part of the solution to overcrowding. Then there's the infrastructure development project of DCS. 5 years ago, we were promised the creation of 6,800 additional bed spaces during the 5th Parliament. Less than 1,000 were delivered. Minister, since you took office, we've been informed that the completion of the Tsenin facility with 435 beds is an example of progress. The truth is that the story of the Tsenin facility is rather proof of wastage and the incredibly poor governance by DCS and its sister department, Public Works. This project commenced 12 years ago. It suffered inordinate delays and the unavoidable resulted ballooning in costs. Nothing to be proud of. The same with Standerton, commenced in 2009 and Escort commenced in 2012. All ran way over time. Now, Minister, in the newest APP you signed off, 2,500 additional bed spaces is promised over the next 5 years. Yet in this financial year, there's no budgetary provision for any infrastructure projects. So there will be 4 years of your term left to deliver these additional spaces. To meet this target and to root out the type of waste that is the hallmark of DCS, you will act like a single-minded, hungry predator. You will be tempted to believe the promises and undertakings that now, because you took office and you've expressed your intentions, that going forward DCS will embrace professional specification drafting, proper transparent bid adjudication and sound financial governance. Don't be hoodwinked. In addition, Chairperson, the dark cloud that still hovers over the current National Commissioner unfortunately complicates issues. As long as there's no stability at the head of DCS, there is no way that the necessary reforms can take place. So therefore, Minister, you will not succeed unless you grab the bull by the horns, ensure that the culture of impunity at DCS is rooted out immediately, and that the top decision makers at the department are appointed who are truly committed and able to deliver clean governance. This, Minister, is the narrow yet your only pathway available to you if you are serious about reforming DCS into a well-functioning department. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Janji from the ANC.
Sihlalo wesession umphathiswa namasekela akho ka Jeffrey nokaholomisa adile izindaba. The pursuit of the restorative justice in South Africa was an integral part of the struggle for liberation by our people led by the ANC in this country. As a direct consequence of that firm belief, the notion of correctional services became a consistent with our progressive constitution as opposed to prison, which is merely about sending them away. And the people on my left believe that you must just create prison and lock them in. But to sustain the notion of correctional services, rehabilitation program is essential. Rehabilitation ke uthi Uba ungene ungunsangweni, usisidlwengu, ungumbulali, funeka uphume ungumntu. That's what rehabilitation is about. As we stand here today, these noble imperatives of a people-centered struggle are confronted with a number of setbacks. Perhaps before we begin, let us pause. There is an emerging crisis in our hands that threatens to derail the best of efforts by any human being. You can have the best commissioner, you can have the best prison warders, but if you are not addressing certain things, you will fire them tomorrow. The problem of overcrowding in correctional services in our country has reached crisis proportions. Without any doubt, the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality remain the driving force for this. Let's just put overcrowding in perspective and in numbers, as other members have raised. We have 118,572 bed spaces across the country. But we have got 162,857 inmates. Before you start, you already know that there's a problem there. It's over 37% of overcrowding. The number of gangsters in incarceration is rising. Budget cuts mean the following two things. That when there's a budget cut, it means you are not going to have maintenance of your infrastructure. This is a crisis that is in our hands. Perhaps let's leave the national picture and give a particular case about St. Albans, as the chair was saying that we've got a report last week from Justice Johan Vroon of the Constitutional Court. In that report, it raises very critical issues about St. Albans. This is in the Eastern Cape. It holds the largest inmates in remand. A report by this justice suggests that there's been no rehabilitation in St. Albans since 2014, which means, therefore, your correctional services notion is defeated because it hangs on that. High levels of violence outside gangs operate in prisons. So those that are in prison connect with those that are outside. Injuries on duty are a cause of staff shortages. In St. Albans, 53 staff members are in shortage, not because they have just not stopped from working, because of injury on duty. That's a serious issue in our hands. In the same center, you have got drugs delivered over the fence. Lights not working in cells. The pressure on remand centers has unintended consequences for the bailing out of inmates who under normal circumstances would not even be considered. Now let's put another perspective on overcrowding about the root causes. And here I come to the Western Cape. Myself and Honorable Self come from the Western Cape, because the Western Cape has got the largest incarceration of allocation of inmates. The largest, second largest. And here are the contributing factors, because there will be no solution. It doesn't matter how many prisons you can build as long as you don't attend. And let me share with you, under the ANC in the Western Cape, this is what was happening, Honorable Self. Contact crime dropped by 33%. Street robbery dropped by 19%. Car hijacking dropped by 23%. Because what that means is that you had less people going to jail. Under the DA, contact crime rose by 17%. Street robbery rose by 5%. Property-related crime rose by 20%. What that means is that the Honorable Self cannot come here and pretend as if somebody else must solve this when the DA in the Western Cape where you are is contributing to the rise of overcrowding. Because that is the root cause why we've got jails full. We must attend to those root causes and not deal with the symptoms of the problem. The ANC has always understood that a sustainable solution is the one that deals effectively with crime-producing conditions, which today, as I said yesterday, Honorable Tele must bring soldiers and police to Philippi because there's no access road, there are no street lights. That no soldier will build a house. No soldier will create employment for unemployed people. It is you running a province that must do that. I thought I must share that with you so that we understand what we're dealing with here. This we said as far back in our Ready to Govern document in 1992. The DA solution is to build more prisons and send them away. Let's perhaps deal with some of the way forward issues. The ANC, when it gathered in Nasrec in 2017, gave its deployees in government, from the president and to the minister, some of the following. Now we're coming to solutions, which we're already grappling with. The ANC has mandated the 6th Parliament to ensure that there is better coherence between the criminal justice system to curb the rise of remand detainees who contribute to overcrowding, that you need to have a workable strategy on hardcore criminals and issues of petty crime. And here is the important issue on overcrowding. Government must develop mechanisms to enable the state to try in our community courts any offender who committed petty crimes. So you don't send them to these major prisons. You've got to deal with that in community courts. Government must attend to the transformation of the parole board so that it is informed by key strategic issues. Embark on a creative utilization of inmates to contribute to the maintenance of the challenge in prisons. And I think we've made this point, Commissioner, in the presentation under the department, that there are certain things that you can't need money for, that the inmates that are there, some of them have got skills that they can do certain things around maintenance, that we must prioritize that. Now let me come to a party that has rejected this vote when we met as a committee. It kept silent here now. They rejected the APP and the budget. And by extension, when they were rejecting that, you were rejecting all of the good efforts that are happening in prisons. I was surprised why they would reject it, but I immediately realized that it is the very same party, the EFF, that in its manifesto, they had no answer on correctional services. So there's no wonder why they are not able to provide any solutions. Now I understand why you can reject it.
Honorable members, order.
All they could do was to mimic the ANC proposals, which are already implementing with the department. It's going to be important.
Honorable members,
that you don't only just get into your overalls and come to Parliament. You need to bring and present solutions when you come to this House. I thank you, Chair.
honorable member. We now call upon Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much.
Honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. Before I start, Honorable House Chairperson, allow me to, because this is the last day of the 3 budget votes I've done in the past 2 days, to thank my wife for her support. my sister who has also been here, and a special mention to my sister, house chair, because she paid for my fees at the university. If it was not for her, I might not be standing here. I could be heading cattle somewhere. And the apostle of my church. Honorable House Chairperson, with regard to overcrowding, I think all parties agree that it's a challenge. As a department, we also agree it's a challenge. We're looking at various plans to deal with it, as I mentioned in the budget vote, in terms of the pre-trial and the post-sentencing procedures in terms of how we can deal with overcrowding. I've heard Honorable Selfie's views. I've also read them on the financial mail. I think there is some kind of convergence. Vomlaudzi, ndova apfazino, ndozi favoris no, avokoto da amba ngashkuwa, uri hey budget, avango itanganeta. So ndizwana zoita uri vangu vasazvipfuri vone Honorable Mlaudzi avango itanganedza hey budget. Mara rine rovapfa nga heimwe content vamba ngayo. It's a constructive input ridoijia. Hoza uri avango itanganedza rasfesesa uri ndimini. There is an instruction from the central authority, so we understand. But the content is clear that Honorable Mlaudzi agree. Honorable Horn, I think Honorable Horn today is very lonely because Mr. Jeffrey is not debating. So his punching back is not there. Honorable Masego Jele, she has taken us through a spiritual journey and verses which I think we need in this department. On our day-to-day work, we have to work to rehabilitate, to remotivate the inmates. And I think that spirit will reverberate in our prisons and correctional centers across the country. With regard to St. Albans, we have initiated an investigation. We are going to report soon in terms of who, what, and how the chickens were stolen. But we have already put a new management team at St. Albans. We have already put and suspended some officials in the Durban Westville. We have announced today another 4 that we have suspended. So we are applying consequence management. With regard to Sun City, indeed, it's almost double, as I've said during the budget input. We are looking at it because Sun City is aimed to be a reception correctional facility, almost where we admit offenders. But because of the overcrowding, we're unable to then distribute them to other centers. So the measures I've spoken about earlier are measures we're looking at to ensure that we resolve this crisis. With regard to Hoodwinked, one of our members, Ms. Turman, was murdered on duty. We have opened a case with the SAPS, and we have suspended the officials that were involved in this matter. And we are hoping that the SAPS will soon act on whoever was involved from within the department or from the inmates in terms of action. We will, because Honorable Member Sturman was a woman, use and dedicate the month of women in correctional service in her honor. Because this is a month for all women in our country. She died as a warrior, she died on duty, she died in service of the country. And for that reason, the month of August in the Department of Correctional Service will be used in her honor. With regard to the various issues of financial mismanagement, we've appointed a new chairperson of the audit committee for the Department of Correctional Service. I think she is in office now for almost 3 months. The audit committee is now co-rating, and we believe they will be able to help us and assist us to ensure that systems of controls on financial management exist and are complied with. We will also do our oversight role, further in engagement with the AG on the various issues that have been raised with regard to corruption. But we have already said to the department that we are also going to apply zero tolerance to any form of corruption. On insourcing, We have not only insourced on the Bosasa issue, we are also looking at insourcing the manufacturing or sewing of the members' uniform. Because we are doing our own uniform, which might not be enough, but we also have capacity to be able to insource our own uniform. Is something we're looking at, and the business model is going to be announced soon, which will enable us to insource the members' uniform. So we're not only dealing with insourcing only for these issues of Busasa. All that can be possible done and be insourced from within. We are doing it, and this is real building of state capacity in action. We're not rhetoricing, we're doing it for real. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, honorable members. Can I have your attention, please? Earlier during the debate this morning, some members resorted to language which I deemed inappropriate and unparliamentary. I accordingly requested the members responsible to withdraw the offending remarks, an order with which they complied. I should restate that it is imperative, honorable members, to uphold the dignity and the decorum of the House. During the exchange, an allegation was made that Honorable Ntlangweni had referred to another member, Honorable Makaka, as a clown. In response to this, I undertook to listen to the recording to ascertain what had been said. Now, according to the record, Honorable Ntlangweni said, and I quote her, "A clown just comes and says, Makaula is dumb," unquote. Honorable members, Assembly Rule 82 states that members must refer to one another in respectful terms. In the context of the exchange, it is clear that Honorable Ntlangweni was referring to Honorable Makaka, who had spoken before her. Now, the reference to a member as a clown is out of order in terms of the rules, and I must therefore ask that Honorable Ntlangweni withdraw the comment unconditionally.
Honorable Chair, I withdraw that a clown is a clown.
Honorable member.
I'm withdrawing. No, I'm withdrawing. You are not going to demand me to do anything. no?
Okay.
I'm withdrawing.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of the day. The mini plenary can rise.